Greetings, 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 good people. Welcome back to what are we on? Night three? Yes, I think, yes, night three of our series leading up to the final triple nine portal on Saturday. This week, we have been talking about these karmic archetypes that are part of our soul's assignment. They drag us and take us through some things, but it's so that we can master the thing that we are here to help and share with others and with humanity. And tonight, we are talking about the sacred redeemer. As I mentioned yesterday, this one is very near and dear to my heart. I have deep experience with this one. It shows up as one of my main archetypal karmic archetypes that I live and work through. So we're gonna get into it a little bit tonight, and yeah, and then on Saturday we will have a some time together and we'll kind of recap things. We'll talk about how to break those cycles. We'll talk about and actually do some ritual and some work together on breaking those. But we're spending these first 4 days, today being the third day, talking about these karmic archetypes that we all hold. And as always, y'all gonna see me looking at my notes. I have a different setup today, so I got my iPad with my notes. Um, Perimenopause is a real thing. Forgetting what you're saying in the middle of saying it is a real thing. Looking for your phone while you're on the phone, y'all know what I'm talking about. So that's where we at. Now, if this today is and all of this series is for women who are finding themselves in these same places, going through the same loops, relationships that keep not working out, jobs and situations that keep not working out, family patterns that keep continuing. We're talking about why those things are here and what they're here to teach us. Now, if you're new here, let me tell you who I am. I am Barbara Ohuninifa. I am an author. I am a coach. I am an ancestral strategist. And I say that because of all of the karmic patterns and paths that my life has taken. What has helped me through all of it is understanding not only my ancestry in a general term, but actually working with my ancestors so that I can do my healing in the here and now, and that helps them heal and it helps my descendants heal. And so working with our ancestors is a very strategic step, is a very strategic move to understand what they've been through and what wisdom they have to give us so that we can move forward and not have to start from scratch and recreate the wheel. So that's part of what I do. I focus on helping Black women remember and understand and recognize that they are beautiful, realize their own power, and to be loved, to be the love that we so freely give to others. Give it to ourselves first so that everyone else is able to feast off the overflow. That is the knowingness that we have to get back to. So if that's your jam, subscribe, like, comment, get active on this YouTube channel because this is the work that I'm here to do. And if you are interested or engaged by it or inspired by it, have some action so that this video can get out to other people and other folks can get access to this information because we all need it. We all need to move forward. And of course, I'm not the only one that's out here, but we all need to do things differently than we've done before in order to move forward. And that's a lot of what this series is about. So let me just do a brief recap. So on day one, we talked about healing the karma of stolen labor and repairing entitlement. And on day two, we talked about turning ancestral trauma into sovereign joy. And what that is the first day was about the sacred builder. So this is people who have been through, who in past lives, ancestral lineage, whatever from the past, has created this deficit around the issue of work, around the concept of work and labor. There's an imbalanced relationship with labor and with building foundations. And so in this life, having that as a karmic debt, it shows up in numerology, astrology, all the divination tools that we can think of from indigenous cultures around the world. It shows up there. The karma shows up and tells us and gives us hints as to what we're dealing with. And being that sacred builder, I look at it as you had these breaks in this broken relationship with labor in the past. And it's so that now you can master all of what that means so that to help build foundations that can actually last, to help build a better relationship with labor and work. And on day two, we talked about the sacred liberator. It was more about the idea of repairing our relationship with joy, with freedom, with desire, with sensuality, with all the things that make life worth living. So if you look at those two as a continuum, that first sacred builder is about the foundation. You can't really flex and do your thing unless you have foundation, unless you understand that work and effort is necessary in these physical bodies in order to manifest in the physical realm. Now, that's not to say that your thought process doesn't have a part to play in that and that we can't manifest things, but we're in a physical body for a reason, and therefore, labor and work is something that we have to have a clear understanding of. And then the next step is that how do you have joy? Life is not only work and labor and building structures and foundations. Work is life is also freedom and joy and desire. All of those sweet honey things that makes life worth living. So think maybe a little bit of Ogun if you understand the Ifa tradition and the Orisha is that sacred builder and the sacred liberator. In some ways, I think of that about that as Oshun, because those are the things that those two orishas represent. But from a karmic perspective, it's in the past something was broken with these concepts that are essential for humanity, and in this life. We're putting credits back in to bring that balance back, to mend what was broken for ourselves and for our lineages. Yes, yes. And then tonight we are talking about the sacred redeemer. And let me make sure I didn't forget anything I want to tell you. But before we get into it, I want to just understand. So, Sacred Builder was one, Sacred Liberator. We're doing Sacred Redeemer tonight, and then tomorrow will be the Sacred Leader, the kind of the fourth aspect of these gates. I really look at them as gates that we have to go through as humans and master these different things. Now, there is usually one, potentially two, that you have to master of these gates. That's your own personal assignment, but quite often they all have a part to play. And whether it's in this lifetime, another lifetime, whether it shows up in a very consistent big way or it shows up um, in a smaller, more concentrated way, maybe it's for a year or a month or a time period in your life that you're going through those things. But all of them add up to knowing and understanding who we are. Now, I'm someone who has lived through, studied, and survived a lot of these karmic situations, almost all of them. And as a Black woman, I have survived the racism of being Black in this country, the sexism of being a woman in this country, in this world, actually, from either one of those, as well as many health journeys and health traumas and betrayals and infidelities and just a lot of experiences in my life that have resulted in me understanding how to move through these things and how to rebuild after these things. So tonight, again, we're talking about the sacred redeemer. Now, this is a karmic path that can be very complex. It can be very difficult to unpack, and and it's my main karmic path. Yay! But what it can mean, and these are I've named these karmic paths, and I look at a number of different modalities to really hone in my understanding of them and what I share. But if you look at numerology, this sacred redeemer would be the 16-7, if you understand karmic numbers in numerology. And so 16-7 is really about when one builds on false ground, when one builds on lack of truth or an illusion. And specifically, it can mean that in a past life there was a betrayal that happened. Like as the person carrying the karmic debt, I would speak for myself. I have it. In a past life, I was one who betrayed. And whatever those actions were that I took in that past life, or that my ancestors took in that past life, or some aspect of my lineage took, there's a balance that has to be brought back. Learning to trust, learning to rebuild, learning to have hope and faith in your own abilities. and then learning to love and have an open heart. And with all of these karmic experiences and all of these karmic archetypes, there's usually some type of health condition that comes along with them as well. So if y'all know about me, you know this health thing has been a real part of my story. But when aligned, 16-7 can be, and the sacred redeemer can be the bridge between the mystical and the practical, can be that person who understands that bigger realm of, we talked a little bit about from science to spirituality. A 16-7 is probably going to be someone um, who studies that to understand it uh, at its base level so that we understand how to move through it and so that we can evolve. Now, my approach, I go a little bit different when I look at all of these, which is one, why I given them names that talks about what your role is as a result of the karmic debts and experiences that your blueprint contains. And your blueprint, again, numerology and astrology is a core part of that, but also tarot, also Odus from the Ifa or Yoruba Ifa tradition, also messages from spirit guides and ancestors. All of that comes to play a part in designing and understanding what these karmic patterns are, but then adding that lens on of being inclusive and being cultural and understanding that the transatlantic slave trade, the global oppression, subjugation, and colonization of indigenous people all over this planet is the biggest karmic wound that humanity has done. And it shows up in different ways, different things throughout history, but oppression of indigenous people, and I'm going to be really specific and say Black people with the transatlantic slave trade, but also oppression of women as a whole. Those two have gone hand in hand. And what has happened and the traumas that Black people have been through, the transatlantic slave trade, that very concept of what happened for us and to us and still happening is a 16-7. I learned this from one of my spiritual teachers, one of my spiritual guides. Well, not guide, he's a living person. It's a Babalao who is a Gan philosophy, Baba Shangodare. And just understanding that this transatlantic slave trade, the things that have happened to us, is a 16-7. It is a betrayal. And that's what is at the core of what the 16-7 is about. And the answer is truth. Now, a 16-7, and I keep saying that because that's what results, that's what leads to being a sacred redeemer. I carry a 16-7. I've had lots of tower moments. That's the other part of this particular path is that things crash and they have to be rebuilt. Things crash and they have to be rebuilt. Whether it's relationship, careers, like every aspect of life can topple, like the tower moment in the tower card in tarot, and has to be rebuilt because it has to be rebuilt. And this is also going to that sacred builder. It has to be rebuilt strong and clear and with integrity, and integrity meaning on truth. Like, can't lie to yourself, can't lie to nobody else. Can't build it on, I don't know, government structures and corporate structures and capitalism that is all based on a facade anyway. You can't build on that and expect it to last. 16-7 will come in and crash that shit immediately. And by immediately, I mean in the spirit realm. It could take a year, it could take 5 minutes, it could take 500 years. I'm just saying. But that 16-7 is, and the Redeemer energy is what is at the core of the transatlantic slave trade. That was a betrayal of humanity, of one group of people versus another group of people. So, as African Americans, and that's a huge part of how I look at all of this information that I'm sharing with you all to understand your path. I'm looking at with that biggest tragedy, with that biggest karmic wound that affects all of us. What does that look like when it shows up for Black women versus when it shows up for white women? What it shows, how it shows up for Black women descended from enslaved Africans and white or non-Black women descended from those who enslaved us or colonized the countries and the continent that we came from and colonized this country. What does that look like to have any of these karmic paths with that particular lens? Because it does get a little bit different. And I talk about truth because truth is that's the only thing we can do. And again, having my own karmic path being the sacred redeemer, if I don't speak truth, I feel it in my body. I feel it in my health. If I feel it in every aspect of my life, if I don't speak truth. So everything I'm saying and I do from that perspective. But why are we talking about this now? Well, I mean, y'all know what's happening in the world, and this is the third night. I've said it before. Everything that we have known to be is now in question. Not only the good things like our civil rights and protections that didn't work perfectly, but at least they were there, going away, being ripped away, being eroded away. The truth of who we are and what we've been through and the trauma that we've experienced as descendants of enslaved people in this country, what our ancestors have been through, there's an attempt now to erase all of that and pretend it didn't happen. All the things and the suppression and oppression of women on this planet cannot continue. Patriarchy and masculinity are not the same thing. Patriarchy has had a chokehold. Patriarchy and capitalism has had a chokehold on this world and on humanity, and that chokehold is ending. Pluto did her thing. To me is, oh yeah. Pluto did her thing in Capricorn, destroying those systems, revealing um, the harm that those systems do. And I'm talking about government, capitalism, all of the structures that we have been based on. That the sacred redeemer says all that got to go as many times as necessary in order for humanity to get it. And now Pluto is in Aquarius, which is about the people, which is about humanity. So the divine feminine is like, listen, it's time, which is part of why A, I talk to women, and B, getting really specific around Black women and non-Black women and what that looks like, because there's a balance, there's a karmic divide that needs to come back into the middle. And that's why we have to talk about it now. And so our intentions for tonight is we want to release fear of collapse. Because here's the thing, collapse has to happen. Sacred Redeemer, a 16-7, betrayal trauma, these are real experiences for humanity, which means things have to be healed. It has to be brought back into balance. And the sacred redeemer says the only way we can do that is to just bring it all down and build again, bring it all down, build again, as many times as necessary. So it would behoove us to understand and move with intention without ego. Because if you start bringing in the ego, it's still built on something false and it still will get destroyed. It still will be brought down. So being comfortable with the idea of collapse, being comfortable with the idea that the things that we build may not be permanent until it's right, until it is the thing that actually can be permanent. But being comfortable with that, because when we hold on to things for far longer than we are supposed to, then when it's time for it to go, it can be really painful. And as we approach the final 999 portal on September 27th, 2 plus 7 equals 9, is the final date that your personal year, month, and day are in alignment, as well as is the final date that our universal year 9, universal month 9, and universal day 9 are all in alignment. And that 9 is about we ending things. So if we think about we're going to go forward, we're ending and also beginning things. I talked about that in some other videos in the September plot twist video. And there's some shorts that will tell you what and how to move or how you could have been moving. And it's still not too late to move based on your personal year number. But this is another layer of understanding if any of these numbers or any of this resonates with you. By this, I mean the karmic archetypes that I'm talking about, these karmic roles that really lend to your soul's assignment, if any of that fits, then this can also help you to know where to focus in on the remainder of September going into October and the fall during this season of change. So we're letting go of fear of collapse so that we don't cling to these toxic structures that actually bring us harm, that bring us pain. And we are learning to release spiritual arrogance. Ooh, that one right there. Oftentimes, and this is kind of that guru thing, right? People gain knowledge and then try to use that to control other people. People gain knowledge and use it to manipulate or even spiritually bypass, not even doing their work, but using some information. It's not wisdom at this point, it's information to position themselves and their ego in a different way. And we're here to have the humility enough to let that go. Yes, 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 yes. So, a couple of things I want to talk about before we get into it is to keep yourself well. Everything I do is from a trauma informed lens. So, we're going to take deep breaths, probably throughout this, but I want you, whenever you need to just take a moment and take a deep breath. Use your breath to calm your system, to calm your nervous system so that you can receive the information that's meant for you to have. And then you can also stand. You can, if you need to get up and pace around while you're listening, do what you got to do. Definitely have some water nearby. Where's my water? Here we go. I got my water because I'm going to need it. And color, doodle, do some things that will help you to stay balanced and to give yourself an outlet, to give your body a physical outlet. So as tension rises, then you have an outlet, whether it's doodling, coloring, or whatever the case. And you can close your eyes and just listen. Take in the information in the best way for you, but take care of yourself in the process because we're not about doing more harm or saying you got to tough it out or no pain, no gain. Psh, we've done enough of that. That's why we have these karmic paths because we've already been through the pain of that karmic wound time and time again in this lifetime. Something that happened in a previous lifetime that led to or is influencing us now, we've already lived through that. So we don't do any more suffering. So color, drink some water, take some deep breaths, do what you need to do to take care of yourself as we have this conversation. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so I'm not going to bring these up on the screen like I was the other nights because I'm talking about these from the heart because I live this particular karmic path. So the first question and discussion point that I talked about in the description is why Black women carry the memory of forced separation and constant vigilance. I mean, and I think that's pretty obvious. I kind of spoke to that in a bit a few minutes ago. The transatlantic slave trade and what the actual act of capturing, kidnapping, maiming, abusing, taking people from their land, people that when those first ships arrived were skeptical but still welcome because the African worldview is one that's based in community. It's one that's based in a love of nature and a love of humanity. So the idea that these strange looking people who showed up on the shores of West Africa would mean the incredible harm that they meant was not part of our worldview. Now, we can have a conversation another time about there were women who likely knew what was coming but weren't listened to. That's a different conversation. Having those people show up and do what they did was a betrayal. And then over 400 years in this country, 500 years globally. I want you to think about that for a minute. Not a couple of decades, hundreds of years of a group of people torturing, kidnapping, maiming, graping, abusing, mutilating, torturing, all of these things happening to a group of people for 500 years. Not a group of people that you were in war with, but a group of people that were in their own land on their own land, I'm talking about continent now, on their own land, minding their own black business, doing their own black African things, taken from there and then sent into a hellscape for the next 400, 500 years. That is a betrayal on a global human level that is unprecedented. Yes, it's happened in other ethnic groups or two other ethnic groups, none for as long or as harshly or as inhumanely as what has happened to African people. And let's talk about African women, African Black women. In the United States, once actually going to retrieve more of us, to kidnap and steal more of us from the continent was no longer legal, rules and laws were changed in the United States so that the slave owners, the slave overseers could impregnate the Black women that they enslaved, and those children, with this change of law, would also be enslaved. Because previously, if the father was free, that meant the child was free. The child would father whatever citizenship status that the father got. But since they wanted to have free access and free reign of Black women's bodies, they changed that law. And in general, changed that law because they could no longer go and retrieve more of us from the continent. So they had to produce slave labor internally. They had to produce slave labor in the States. So that's where breeding farms came into play. Women that would just be forced to have children after child after child after child. No, no control or input on who they were having a child with. Oftentimes, wouldn't even know the way some of these places were set up. I just want to pause for a minute in the grief that I actually feel in my body in talking about it. It's horrific. It's not even words that can describe what was done to us. And that's just one small aspect of it. The mutilization, the brutalization to both men and women, Black men and Black women. And then you look at another being who has two arms, two legs, talks and walks, has the structure of a human being, but they tell you you're not human. And they treat you worse than they actually treat animals. That is what happened to us for, I'm going to just call it 500 years because I'm going to count our people that were taken to Brazil as well, because they were our cousins, some of them from the same tribe, same families. That is what happened to us and has been happening to us for 500 years. That is the ultimate betrayal. That betrayal trauma, and it's a real thing, it will have you unable to trust people, unable to trust circumstances, and on some levels, unable to or have very difficult time even trusting God, trusting spirit, because how could you let this happen is part of the logic that comes in within that. There's so much healing that has to take place. And then, that's on the broader level. On a personal level, it can be something as simple as being cheated on. That's a real thing. That's a betrayal trauma. The whole general definition is someone that you would expect to care about you, that is not an enemy, which in that broader sense, we're all part of humanity. You would not expect another human to do the things that colonizers and enslavers did and white supremacists continue to do. We wouldn't expect that from within humanity. That's a betrayal. But when someone you care about on a personal level betrays you, lies, breaks an agreement, breaks a covenant, that's another betrayal. So oftentimes these things we are born and it's there because of what I just mentioned, generally with being a descendant of enslaved Africans, that 16:7, that sacred redeemer trauma, drama, those tower moments are already there. The huge tower moment was having people kidnap you off out of your own home, your own tribe, your own place of beingness, and come to this foreign land to never, ever see your people again. The grief and the sorrow that they must have had. And so when we think about why Black women carry this memory, it was almost a survival requirement to carry that memory so that we could keep ourselves and our children safe going forward. In my first book, From Fat, Black, and Unlovable to Beautiful, Powerful Love, I speak a little bit, well, I have a whole chapter where I talk about these plantation proverbs. And these were things that we've all heard growing up that let us know, that gave us clues on how to stay safe. And quite a bit of everything that Black women teach their children is about staying safe. That has been passed down from times when we were enslaved on the plantations. It's about trying to stay safe. So carrying that memory of that forced separation and being constantly vigilant about what could go wrong, something could mean, what someone could do to you, how to prepare for when something goes off the rails, waiting for the other shoe to drop. All of that is a stressor on your nervous system, which we see show up in all of the health indicators. There's so much research now about the impact of trauma on our health that normal Western medicine doesn't even take into account, because then we would have to look at how we have been traumatizing groups of people, Black women, and why certain health conditions are prevalent in our communities or in the communities of other people that are oppressed. But today we talk about Black women and then white women as well. So that's why we carry that memory. Some of it has been a requirement for survival, but now it has become a burden. It has become something that we have to release so that we can move forward, so that we can grow and heal and actually learn to trust ourselves first and foremost, and then to trust others with boundaries and wisdom. That's the ultimate. You can't skip, jump, and spiritually bypass your way through this path. You are going to, and I've said this before, army crawl your way over glass to get to the other side. There is no other way around. This karmic path is about that life. So, next thing we wanted to talk about is how the descendants of colonizers, what they have to face when their privilege built illusions crumble. And we're seeing that now. They are holding on for dear life. They are holding on and trying to recreate a time when they had free reign over everything and everyone, the women, the children, the uh, the Black people, the brown people, everyone and everything else. And it really comes down to white men, patriarchy, trying to get it back to when they had more control. But the time for that is done. So when we think about the colonizers or women who are descended from colonizers, you have to face the realities of, even if you've had a difficult time in your life as a white woman, because no one gets to escape. You may have grown up poor, you may have grown up and had abuse or situations that one would not say you have privilege if you just think about and talk about the situations you've been in. But you have to take a step back and really look at the bigger picture of what position white women have been in this country and in the system. We've been talking about it all week. In order to be a part of and benefit from the patriarchal system, you had to, as white women, uphold it, which meant you were also oppressed as a white woman, but at least you weren't Black. But at least you had more freedoms and rights than a Black woman or anyone that's Black, but you were still oppressed. You gave up your selfness, and I'm saying you, talking generally about the white women in general, and your ancestral mothers gave up a part of their own selfhood for the comfort and perceived safety of being cloaked under patriarchy, under white supremacy, white false supremacy. Because that's the other thing. It's been woven in for so many years. Some folks truly, some white people, some white women truly, truly believe the lies that they've been getting fed. But the sacred redeemer, the path of the 16-7, the path of this particular karmic archetype says all of that has to go. The entire, again, slave trade, the oppression, all of it is built on lies, illusion, and deceit. So it has to crumble. The reality of this false superiority that white people have had and white women have been able to take advantage of is all crumbling. So the idea now is to lean in and face that shit and let it go. I've said this in another short video. I think it's on TikTok. It's time to put on the big girl panties and realize that you have been and your ancestral mothers have been both a beneficiary of this current capitalist patriarchal system that we're in, racist system that we're in, as well as have been, I'm going to use the word victim, but just make that a real light word because I always want you to understand as white women, you have been oppressed or suppressed in some ways, but nothing in comparison to what Black people have been through, descendants of enslaved Africans, what enslaved Africans went through is not even on the same level. And I only want to mention it because so many white women want to say, well, we were oppressed too, but you got rights, but you got all these other things. And I want you to let that go. That's part of what you got to let go of, to stop centering yourself in that and to know that you got to face that. And the privilege got to go. You got to be willing to make yourself uncomfortable and rebuild again and rebuild again and do so proactively because the time is coming. And it ain't gonna be in a damn rapture. Today is what, the 25th? Is it 25th? Yeah, today's the 25th. We all still here. The rapture didn't happen, y'all. So you can't bypass, you can't pretend like it's gonna be all good. You gotta do the work of facing what your foremothers and forefathers did and what your foremothers remained silent or were forced into being silent to let happen. And I say this from the position of, and I've said this before, I am a descendant of enslaved Africans. I know who my people are. Coming from the plantations in the Delta, Mississippi, somewhere in Virginia, South Carolina, all throughout that South. That's where my people is, primarily Mississippi and Louisiana, though. I also am very aware of at least two or three white men who had children with their owned Black women who are in my ancestral lineage. And that's only because some of those records were able to be found quite easily. Or I won't say quite easily. They owned enough land where I could find them, which means that there is some old European blood running through these veins as well. And when I do my ancestral work, the more I've done my ancestral work over the last decade, some of the really, really, really ancient never ever called themselves white because it wasn't a construct that was invented when they were on the planet, but they were the wise indigenous women in the lands of Europe and surrounding continents, which again, they didn't even name them things that they were very much specific to their tribes, much like the indigenous people in Africa were. Not the exact same, but this tribal concept was there until somebody decided to just make it all about white and Black. But those ancestral mothers that walk with me as well are the ones who are telling me, say the truth of this too, because the work that has to be done now is women. Black women have to remember who the fuck we are, straight up in all the ways. That's the name of one of my books, by the way. And white women need to face the truth of who they have been and who they can be, and to give up the comforts that these last several hundred years of illusion have provided to them. Now, how and what we do and how they do that, that's a very individual thing. All of this is very individual because on the top of these huge karmic events and karmic debts that we have as humanity, we all have our own personal lineage karma, our own personal individual person things that we have to deal with and karma. But all of it adds up to you have a purpose. You are here for a purpose. You are here doing this huge transition for the planet and for humanity for a reason. But you can only fulfill that purpose, fulfill that reason when you are willing to be brave, have courage, and face the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the light and the shadow, all of it. And that applies to all of us, but I'm saying that specifically to white women because of that lack of accountability that has been prevalent. It's time to be accountable for what your foremothers did or didn't do, because some were very complicit and happily participating in the lynchings and the mutilization and all the other horrible things that happen to our people and continue to. We see it on social media now. There are women who love the idea of calling ICE on somebody, who love the idea of calling the police on somebody because they know exactly what that means and that they're able to weaponize it. There are women, black white women who thrive on that. So I want you to understand that it is time to face the fullness and face the realities of what your ancestral mothers who were that same way. But then there are also some ancestral mothers who were abused, who wanted out, who didn't want anything to do with this. There were white ancestral mothers who helped Black people escape, who helped in some way that they could. There were abolitionists. So I want you to understand and be able to face white women, both of those realities. And you got to choose where you're going to be. Your ancestral mothers want you to choose to do something different than what they did, to have more courage than what they had, to change the trajectory. All right, I could keep going, but I'm a pull back and keep it moving. So today, again, we're talking about that path of the sacred redeemer, the 16-7 karmic path that is at the core of the transatlantic slave trade, and this fracture of humanity of one group abusing, exploiting, and doing all these things to another group. And what that actually looks like. Now, 16-7 again, and this path can show up in different ways, but I'm talking about it from this global lens because I think it's important that we address that in our individual lives because it is one of the, again, the huge, the biggest karmic wound that humanity has to deal with. And you have to deal with it. It ain't going away, not on its own. So, the third thing we want to talk about is how radical honesty repairs the harm of both silence and supremacy. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit as I've been going through. You cannot lie anymore. The lying that we're seeing going on, coming out of the highest supposed positions on in this country, the straight up lying and gaslighting, I'm just really interested to see when it's all going to crash because it will crash. You cannot build structure on lies and expect it to last for long. Damn sure not now because all of the energy is shifting. We are in a new and different time, and speaking the truth and the layers of the truth is what's required. And by layers, I mean your own personal truth, but you got to know what that is first. You actually have to know who you are. What is yours versus what you've inherited from ancestral trauma? What is yours versus what you have been indoctrinated into from society or patriarchy or even your family? You have to be able to strip away all of that. You got to create your own tower moment so you can actually know who you are and be able to walk in the truth of that. That's the only way to move. And when you can be honest and have that truth with yourself, then you can have that truth and that honesty with your family and your community. I spoke yesterday and I gave the advice and tip to the to white women to have these difficult conversations in your family. To actually look at your own ancestry, which is going to be much easier for y'all because they didn't burn y'all records. You know who you are, and you can trace back some great grandmothers. Whereas I look at my records, it's just going to say mulatto slave woman, or it's going to say Negro with no name, or the name's going to be spelled like 10 different ways because the census taker really did not give two F's about these black people he was counting. So for you, you can go and look at that and have that conversation with your family. Like, listen, we were slave owners, we were overseers, we were X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about that. Let's unpack it. That's what you can do in your families as white women to start speaking the truth. So again, your own truth, knowing who the fuck you are, truly, 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 versus what you have been brainwashed to believe, having this truth conversation with your families about who and what you've actually been. I don't care what they trying to erase. The truth is in our cellular memory. And if we don't deal with it on some levels, it's going to come out because it has to. That's the way the universe works. So proactively have these conversations, truthful conversations with your family, with your community. Call people out that's on some bullshit. Do not let Meemaw sell her racist ass jokes anymore. It's done. And if they want to continue to be how they are, you got some decisions to make on who you want to be and how you want to move forward. But the truth and honesty is difficult, but it's required. And the thing about this path, it's going to show up for everyone to some degree. Folks like me, you're going to it's just, you learn to live with it. You learn to surf it. You learn to constantly release things and rebuild, release things and rebuild. So when you can proactively say, this is not working, I got to break something up so I can start forward and start new again. That's what you got to do. So you got to, it's the radical honesty. And that's part of what I'm doing now. Like I'm giving you the example of a sacred redeemer. I'm not trying to be politically correct. I want to say things in a way where it can be heard, but white women in this country descended from those who enslaved black people need to face the reality of that and understand racism, sexism, and how it has infiltrated their own minds for so long that it's going to take some time and effort to eradicate it. It's the realness. It's the realness. And all of this transformation is about, it's about transforming, but proactively transforming. And I'll take a pause for the cause and just mention the course that I'm offering. I'm starting a fall cohort of the course. It's called Your Soul Knows the Assignment. And that's what it comes down to. You know why, your soul knows why it came here. And we are oftentimes so off track, so busy chasing the check or chasing the thing that everyone else in the world is telling us that we should be doing, when the reality is you came here with gifts and talents. You came here with some structured classes and training set up in your life, these karmic paths, so that you could master a thing to then be able to be medicine for yourself, for your family, for your lineage, for your community, for humanity, in that order. But you can't do any of it if you're too busy off trying to fulfill somebody else's life, somebody else's mission that they are here to do. You got to do what you're here to do, and that's what this class is about. Your soul knows the assignment. We're going to break it all down and really come together, understand what in depth these karmic paths mean, what it means for you in particular, because we're going to look at all of it, and then really get into some tools and strategies to help us live that life, to walk that walk, whether it's ancestral veneration, trauma informed self care techniques, or just knowing more about yourself and having community, a safe community that you can unpack it with. That's what that course is about. It's 6 weeks. We're gonna start sometime this fall. I haven't set the date yet. I'm waiting for Spirit to drop it into me when that's gonna happen. But what you can do is how it works is that I have people sign up for a vibe check call. We'll have a conversation, see if this is for you, see if there's white women who are interested in taking the course. I'm going to have two separate cohorts so that everyone can feel safe and clear. And black women, it's often difficult for us to feel good in a room with white women because white women often center themselves. And I need the black women to be able to let down their guard and heal what they need to heal without having to worry about having to defend against white women who some do it intentionally, some just do it because that's what they've been taught to do. We'll have it two separate groups. But that's what we're going to talk about in the vibe check call, and we'll get into all the details. My calendar is open till the end of this series that ends Saturday night. So book your vibe check call now, and then I'm gonna close the calendar because I got to preserve my own energy. We'll have the conversations will be next week, but you got to book the time now. So if that's something that you're into, you want to hear more about and learn more about, definitely there's a pinned comment in the comments. And the link is there where you can book that call and then we'll have a chat and see if it works for you. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. The fourth thing that we were going to talk about tonight is about when old identities must die so a truer self and a more just world can rise. Child, listen, do you know how many times I have reinvented myself? Not because I necessarily wanted to, but because shit crashed and I had to rebuild it. And I had to rebuild it in a way that made sense for who I was then. And the same thing is happening to this nation. The same thing is happening to the world. Things are crashing so that it can be rebuilt. Real. It can be rebuilt. And the same thing will happen within your life. Something as simple as a job loss. Something as simple as, damn, you got into an accident, your car got totaled. These things happen in our lives not to happen to us, but for us. And if you're walking this path of the sacred redeemer, and even if that's not your main karmic path, it's going to have an aspect to play of learning. It's going to have an aspect to play in your life, and you have to learn how to proactively change things, not just for the willy-nilly sake of changing it, but be willing to evolve and grow because we get stuck in these ways of being that's, again, has been based on false illusions. So we can proactively dive into something to see if it's true. Is it true for us? Is it true now? Is it relevant? Do I need to keep doing this? Do I need to keep thinking this? Do I need to keep being this? Do I need to stay in this place? Do I need to stay in that relationship? Do I need to stay in that job? Do I need to change careers altogether? Everything is up for grabs in your life and in the world. Lean in so that you can make those changes and that new you can rise up. Who's trying to burst out? She's trying to, they trying to do the thing. That's your soul knowing its assignment and knowing it can't fulfill its assignment with the old identity that you're holding on to. You can't do what you came here to do, still being that good little girl, that good submissive wife that somebody told you you were supposed to be. You can't do what you came here to do until you are able to shed all of those identities and simply be. That takes some work. That takes work and it takes community because oftentimes the people around you, the people who honestly love you to the best of their ability, will keep you in that position, will keep you being the same person because that's who they know. That's who they're comfortable with. As far as they're concerned, they're trying to keep you safe because that's who you always been. Why are you changing so much? Not understanding, sis, bruh, person, you supposed to change too. So having a community of people who are all proactively opening up their hearts, opening up their lives to understand and figure out who they actually are so that they can align the things that they do, the purpose that they have, the work that they're here to do, the strengths and gifts and talents that they have, as well as the shadows and the struggles that they all have a part to play in your purpose. When you can be with other people who understand that, it enables you to go further, faster. And you still be in community with your family and all the people that knew you from way back in the day. They just gonna have to get with the program and know that you're someone new now. And maybe you can bring them along, but you can't do that without first doing it yourself. We talked about yesterday that to work in towards true liberation, true joy, true sovereign liberated joy, you got to do that for yourself first. Or it'll be out of obligation or out of dogma or some other thing that's not actual true liberation. You got to liberate you first, and nobody else can do it but you. Sacred Redeemer says you redeeming yourself and your bloodline because you're doing the work. And I'm for real, I can't tell you how many times I envision as I'm getting through some hard times, I'm army crawling over glass. I'm getting through it. I'm going through the things. I don't want to have to go through pain, but for me to get to the other side, I gotta go. I can't stay stuck here. I gotta go. So that is and as you go, you leave that old identity behind because if you drag it with you, it's gonna be so much more painful, so much more difficult. It's gonna take you so much more time. Understanding how, and I'll give you a tip, something that I've done and I often do. I think about the things I want to achieve and accomplish. I think about what's really important to me. And I do framework. So I think about it in terms of my physical, my mental, my emotional, and my spiritual. What are the four things in the things in those categories that ultimately I want to contribute to the world? And in order to do those, who do I have to be? What's my identity? Who's that? I'm a intraplanetary traveler. I'm a digital nomad. I travels. I'm an internal nomad. I go into my body, into my mind, into the thought processes that I have, and I explore. I explore internally and I explore externally. That's part of one of my identities that I've defined now. And help knowing that part of me helps me to make decisions and navigate when I need to navigate or make a choice or a decision. But understanding who you need to do what you need to do, and not a fake who you need to be, like emulating somebody else. It's being more of you, truly, truly you, without everybody else's expectations on it. And then, well, if I'm that person, that identity who aligns with these things that I know are in my heart, that I'm passionate about, that are part of who I am to contribute, if that's my identity, how does that person with that identity behave on a daily basis? What actions does she, he, or them take? What's the action? So you go from these very big, broad concepts of what you're passionate about. You understand who you got to be. What's the identity? Define it, break it down, do the things. And then says, okay, if that person is the identity, what does she do every day? If she's a traveler, she's an interplanetary traveler, intra, going around the planet. I forgot how I put that. But anyway, if she's a traveler, he can't be scared to get on planes. He can't be scared to drive. She got to be able to lift her luggage and pack up things, so she need to have some strength. So that ties into another identity and actions of being physically fit, or at least working on it. Oftentimes when people think about the whole concept of losing weight, well, if you want to look like this and be snatched like that, who's that person? What's her identity? Give her a whole story. And what does she do on a daily basis? Does she sleep in or does she get up and go for a walk? Simple things like that is what I'm saying, is break it down, all of those sections, all the way down to the simple things, all the way down to the daily actions or the weekly actions, whatever is less overwhelming for you, but thinking about it in that way. And then the last point, our fifth point tonight, is why shared courage to face shadow redeems entire bloodlines. Woo cha. I'm gonna just pause there for a second. Now, yesterday we talked about the sacred liberator, which in numerology comes out to the 14-5 karmic debt, which is about excess of things, excess of pleasures that were had in some way, or it's really about your relationship with pleasure and desire and freedom. For some, it was an extreme excess and exploitations of others, white, non-black, descended from enslavers and colonizers. For others, it was the denial of pleasure. It was the denial of being able to express desire and joy, and it was absolutely stolen freedom. And between the two of those, karmic debt 14.5 in general can lead to addictions of all sorts because it's extremes. There's no moderation. So addictions of drugs, alcohol, sex, food, smoking, anything that can be gambling, anything that can be addicted oftentimes shows up in 14.5. So if we think about 14.5 and that idea of addiction, how many of us have families, grandparents, parents, where there is um, a history of addiction in that family, in that bloodline, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it is? You have to have the courage to face that shadow and understand why it's there. Why is this thing that's moving through our family there? Where's the origin of it? And how do we go either heal that origin of it if you're going to go back and do some timeline work? I've done that and actually seen and understood where some of these things originated with in my own bloodline. So you can do some timeline work or just resolve it in the here and now. Have conversations with people in your family. Actually address the issue of addiction. Speak on it. Talk about it. Go volunteer at addiction recovery centers. If this is something that has moved through your bloodline and you have been able to escape it or heal from it, go help somebody else heal from it, escape from it. That's the courage. When you know a thing has been on your family's back and your back, and you go and you help somebody else get it off their back, that takes courage to do that because that means you got to face your own shit as you helping them face theirs. It's required. And I would say through all of this, courage is required. No matter what the karmic path is, no matter what your soul's assignment, being a human being, being a spiritual being, having a human experience is not for the weak. It ain't for no punks. It ain't for people who use intimidation, oppression, lies, stealing, harm, gaslighting. That is not being a spiritual being having a human experience. That's being in the Ifa tradition, what we call ajugun. That's being the negative energies and entities that push humanity to grow and evolve because there's some negative shit that's right there forcing you to. It's either going to take you or you're going to defeat it. And don't think about this in terms of Christianity. Ajugun is also necessary, but they have just been running rampant for too long and things need to come back into balance now, is all I'm saying. But you have to have the courage to face your own shadows, the shadows in your lineage, the shadows of your foremothers and forefathers, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. You have to have the courage to face that and to take accountability for it. For white women, it's taking accountability for the fact that accountability without shame, because that's always the first thing to come up is like they feel so bad or don't even want to talk about it or don't even want, like, this is where courage comes in. Knowing what was done and saying, okay, but right here, right now, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to push against my programming to do something different. And for Black women, it's doing something different in terms of trusting yourself. Because that's the biggest break with this particular karmic path is trust. We could not trust those other human beings who showed up and kidnapped us for 500 years and did horrible, unspeakable things to us and continue to do so. And now trying to gaslight us and tell us that ain't what happened. There's no way, it's almost impossible to trust after that, but that is the work. And the best and easiest way I have found as someone who, again, is walking with this karmic path is to learn to trust myself. not my programming, not those voices in not that I hear voices in my head, but you know how you'll hear a critic that is actually someone else, an old teacher, or old boyfriend, or somebody that told you negative things, and you hear those words. Not that. Trusting that small, still voice within you that is truly who you are. But you got to remove all the other stuff so that you can hear it and then develop a relationship with yourself first so that you can learn to trust yourself first. When I was able to do that, and it's an ongoing progress. Sometimes, some weeks, some days is better than others. But once I was able to get there, then I can move around and be in different spaces and places and be open because I trust myself to enough to know if I get an inkling, if I hear a thing, if I found out from someone that things were off, then I trust myself enough to know I'm gonna get the fuck up out that situation. Or I trust myself to know I am gonna set a boundary and I'm gonna speak up on it. I'm not gonna play the good little girl, the good quiet girl, or the obedient or the submissive, any of that. I am going to take care of me. I trust myself now. So, as Black women, trusting yourself, your intuition, truly knowing and trusting yourself, that's the medicine to resolve that. And that's why having courage is so incredibly important. Because that means you got to go out on a limb to believe yourself and keep doing it, maybe in small ways, not something that's going to be hugely consequential, but in small ways so that you can hear and trust what you hear. And the more you listen to that small, still voice, any file, that we refer to it as Ori, or you can call it your soul. You can give her a name. I don't care. If the more you listen to her, the more clearer it's going to be. And when I say listen, I'm not even talking about listening like you're going to hear auditory. Whatever way that you receive will get stronger and stronger the more you trust it. But it takes courage and you got to face the shadows so that you know when it is. And it's not even about running away from shadow. Shadow is a part of who you are. A shadow exists because there is light. It's a part of who you are. It's a part of your gifts and talents. You just got to know when to bring it out and how to use her, how to integrate her. Takes courage. Takes courage, takes courage. And so with all of this and with these points that we're making tonight, these sacred redeemer path, we are redeeming our bloodlines. The shame, the hurt, the pain of being enslaved and dehumanized for hundreds of years to being commoditized for hundreds of years, there is a healing that needs to take place in that and redeemed within that. And a similar thing is true for white women or non-Black women. You have to redeem the sins of your foremothers and forefathers. And I'm not talking about sins in the Christian sense. I'm talking about abusing and exploiting and enslaving and colonizing and oppressing whole nations of people for hundreds of years to build wealth and comfort for yourselves. That has to be balanced. We all got work to do. And I'm addressing it in this way, talking to Black women and talking to white women, because I know in order for humanity to truly move forward, these two groups got to do some work. Individually, meaning white women do their work, Black women do their work, and eventually maybe we could do some things together under the auspicious of divine feminine getting this world back together, because that's what she's trying to get to. That's where the feminine energy that has been suppressed on this planet is trying to get to. So if I need to tell some white women straight up, get big girl panties on and do this work and face the facts of what your people have done and understand how you can shift that now, then I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna tell Black women to trust in yourself, to do the work, to release all of these um, expectations placed on what it means to be a Black woman and be who the fuck you came here to be. And that might mean people need to go out of your life. That might mean you need to change things that make no sense to your family whatsoever, but you got to do what you need to do to be in alignment to redeem and bring back what was lost in our bloodlines. Yes, 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 yes. And so sign up for a vibe check call so we can talk a little bit more in depth about your soul knows the assignment as a course. And it's really about the transformation that will result from the time spent and from learning more about yourself, learning more about who you are, understanding those karmic archetypes, and giving you some actual tools to use and community in which to do it in, and a sandbox in which to do it in, so that you can do what you came here to do. Because that's all I want. I want people who came here in light to do light things for us to do what they came here to do and not be lost in the sauce. So whatever part I have to play in my role as sacred redeemer slash builder slash liberator slash leader, because I got some of all of the stuff, but the main one is redeemer. If I got to do that and have these truthful conversations, then that's what I'm gonna do, because I want all of us on deck. I want my children, grandchildren, and my descendants, and your descendants, children and grandchildren, to have the world that is possible for them, that is possible for humanity. And it don't look nothing like what we've had so far already. It's something completely different. In order to do that, we all got to show up as who we are. Ashe, ashe. Now, oh, what you say? Ah, I've been missing that all day. What do you call family members messing around with their kinfolk, significant other generation after? Um, that sounds like some 16:7 because it's about betrayal. 16:7 is often, and the sacred redeemer is often about. Hopefully you still here because I don't even know when you left that. It's often about betrayal as it relates to love. So often it can be, that's why I said infidelity, and that comes on any side of the equation, right? I've seen this in E5 with the Odus. There's this idea of being a side chick or a side whatever or infidelity, and it's whether you're doing the cheating, being the one that's cheated with, or the one that's cheated on. It's all part of the same karmic capsule. So if that's happening within the bloodline, not only passing through the bloodline, but the cheating of the infidelity is happening within the bloodline. That feels like a 16:7, and maybe even, path of the sacred redeemer, and maybe even a little sacred liberator, because it feels like there's some addiction in there as well. But that's something that, in the reading with the Your Soul Knows the Assignment for everyone. For the first cohort, I didn't do my in-depth reading for everyone, only if they, bought the package to do that. But now I'm including it in because it just makes it so much more of a rich experience. So you'll be able to see, oh yeah, that shit is showing up. And then sometimes you can even, if you know information on, not as a part of the course, but you can just look at some of the basic numbers from a family member. Like I looked at my parents, and I have an ancestor who I never knew, but is one who guides me now. And I found out her birth information, and I looked at some of her numerology. Now, the further you go back, the less accurate their name spellings are. So that part may not be as accurate. Sometimes the birth dates aren't even accurate because they be writing stuff in Bibles. It wasn't like it was in a hospital back then. But the point is, you can get more of a clue and do some detective work to understand. Oh, yeah, yeah. But the fact that you observed it and it's moving through, yeah, it's absolutely there. There's something that has to be redeemed. There's a love that needs to be retained, that needs to be healed. And there's some work that needs to be done there. But that's a lot, girl. That's a lot. 16. So 16:7, it means if you have a number in your numerology and it's a 7. How you get to the 7 is what matters. Is it 16 that adds to the 7? Or is it a 2 and a 5 that adds to the 7? Or is it just a straight up 7? The numbers all added to 7. When it is a 16 and then you reduce that down to one digit and it's a 7, that's a karmic number. And it's important for you to do the calculations in different ways, because depending on how you do it, it may not show. Because I know I've done some before. I'm like, this feels karmic though, but why? And then when I do the calculations in a different way, I'm like, oh, there it is. That is. So when I say 16/7, it's usually spelled 16/7 because you don't want to just say 7 because then you miss the idea and the understanding that it's a karmic number, which has a different, I mean, it's still spiritual, it's still mystic, it's still studious, studying, um, and really being into the occult, really being into understanding why things happen. But when it gets to be a karmic 7, you have all of these other pieces and a little bit of baggage to come along with it. So that's what I mean when I say 16/7. Ashe, ashe. Okay, so let's take a deep breath, y'all. We're about to wrap it up. Going to inhale through your nose and you're going to exhale through your mouth. As you inhale, I want you to expand everything. Your chest, your lungs can expand forward, side, and back. Your ribs have just a little bit of space between them. And the more you do this, the more they can move. Well, your ribs can expand forwards and backwards. Just picture it in your mind. However much they expand, it's how much they expand. But as you inhale, picture yourself blowing up like a balloon. Your belly blows up, your chest, everything. Let the air fill you. And then as you exhale, exhale through your mouth. Pull your diaphragm up, suck in your stomach, make all of the air push up out of your lungs. And as the air comes up out of your lungs, release all of the tension from every cell, from every nook and cranny in your body. Let it all come out. Yes, yes? And we're going to do that 3 times. I know I need it. Y'all might need it too. Let's go. You want to inhale and exhale. Let's do it again. Inhale through your nose. And one more, make this one a big one. Make sound when you exhale. Stick your tongue out if you have to. Let it all go. Inhale. Ah. Ooh, child, I felt that one. Ashe. How y'all doing? Any other questions tonight about the Sacred Redeemer path, about the course coming up? Again, pin comment, click in, get the scheduled. We good? We good? Okay. We're gonna keep it moving. I did not do TikTok tonight, y'all. That was not happening. I think I'm actually gonna get off TikTok. We apparently are in our own little United States bubble with our own algorithm, and I just don't want to participate. So follow me on, well, if you're here on YouTube, you already follow me on YouTube. But I want to thank you for those who showed up live. I see Keita May. I think there was I don't recognize the other names, but there was a few other folks. So I thank you for showing up live. And those who are watching the replay, I appreciate you as well. Share, like, subscribe, do all the things because as I've been saying all year, we got some times ahead of us and we have, each of us has an assignment, a role to play. And each of us has ancestors that are clamoring to help us, to assist us, to help us to move into spaces and places that we need to move into. And tomorrow we are going to talk about releasing the fear of visibility and the habit of centering self. You already know who we're talking about. I mean, and the reality is both of those can show up on both sides, but in general, it is those are hallmarks for 2 different groups and lineages of people. So that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. It's a sacred leader where abuse of power has been a huge theme, but again, it shows up differently. And it even shows up differently depending on where it shows up in your chart. It could be an indication of of childhood abuse of some way because it's an abuse of power. Depending on when it happened, you didn't have power as a child. So it's an indication of other things. But we'll talk about that. If you've missed the other 2 nights, go check out the replays. But join us on Saturday when we're going to do the final unbinding ritual. We'll recap some things, we'll talk about some things, and then we're going to go in. We're going to go in on that 2-7 final portal. 999, letting go, letting go, letting go, and calling in whatever your personal year number is as well, with the idea of which of these karmic archetypes are yours. And don't worry if it's all confusing. Just focus on where you need to where you need to focus, and we're getting it done. Yes, yes. All right, y'all. We're gonna wrap it up for tonight. This has been an interesting one for me. I hope it was good for you. And I'm so thankful. I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful that you are here. And I will see y'all back here tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, here on YouTube. And until then, and as always, take good care of you because you're the only one who can. Peace, y'all.